Okay, we're going to discuss the history of computers. I thought we'd go back in time, start from the beginning, from what I can understand, by using this timeline to give us a better understanding. So, take a look at the timeline. You'll see that we go back in time all the way to 600 BC. I know this is difficult to understand, but if this is the beginning of the timeline, let's go to here, and we're going to make this the year 1900. Now the reason I put 1900 right here is because this is where science really started to kick in, right around 1900. The year is 2014 now. Do you know that within the last 100 years, let's just say 114, that'll get us back to 1900 right here. Within the last 114 years, most of everything we know about science happened in that period. What happened before then was a little bit of science, which led to us discovering most everything we know about science to 1900. So without the scientists and the thinkers and the philosophers of the time before 1900, we wouldn't have what we have today. So speaking about computers, what we're really speaking about is math, counting. Civilizations have been counting forever, whether they use sticks and stones or drawings in the sand or markings on a wall. That's how they recorded their math. As civilizations progressed and people started to organize themselves a little bit more, then smart people started to come up with better ways to count. We're going to start here, 600 BC. So I found this yesterday. I thought it was really interesting. It's called a counting table, and this is what the Romans used. I know this picture is really hard to see, but this is a stone slab, and they've kind of carved out some slots. And they used little stones as counters, and they used the stones are called calculi. Does that sound familiar to you? Calculi. I even spelled it right here for you. What they did was they divided this into two parts. The top part here was called heaven, and the bottom part here was called earth. And everything in heaven was worth fives, and everything below here was worth ones. Well, that led to the abacus. Now this is something you may have heard of. This is the abacus in China, about 100 BC. And when we say BC, we calculate that as so a lot of people say before Christ, but we measure our years in terms of when Christ died. So 0 was when Christ died, and so this was obviously about 100 years before Christ was, about 70 years before Christ was born. Okay, now getting back to the abacus, this was made of wood probably, and who knows, bone, whatever they could make the round pegs out. And it's very similar, you notice. So you can see that perhaps the Romans and the Chinese were trading with each other and passed this information along. So again, you've got the top part, which is worth fives, and you got a bottom part worth ones. And that's how they started calculating, adding and subtracting. No paper needed. Well, and paper, yeah, papyrus, perhaps. Or they recorded it on stone, which I can't imagine is a very, very efficient tool for recording. Anyway, these were basically the first computers. And not much changed for a long time. As we go up the timeline to around the year 1300, when people were looking up into the sky, and they created something called astrolabe. I spelled that wrong. That should actually be a A. I'm going to fix that. It's an astrolabe or an astrolabe. I don't know how it's pronounced, to tell you the truth, but that's my best shot. It's a Greek word meaning star taker, and the stargazers in Islam around 1300s invented this tool to help them predict the planets and the sun's movements, and help them tell time as well. And again, not much changed for hundreds and hundreds of years until we get to this guy right here. His name is Charles Babbage, and this is around the year 1820. So we're thinking about 45 years after the Revolutionary War here in America. This guy lived in England, and he decided to make a machine, since we're into the machine years, or right before the Industrial Revolution. He wanted to make a machine that could help calculate. And he did. He made this machine. He calls it the difference engine. I know that's really hard to see. I wish that was bigger. The difference engine. And it made precision calculations. And scientists today even go back to it and look at it, and they're amazed at how accurate it was, how much it's like computers today. Except it's something you couldn't carry around like a laptop, that's for sure. I'm sure it weighed very, very many pounds. Okay, and that's the history for now. I just wanted to bring you all the way up to 1900, because that's when it really gets started. But before 1900, there wasn't much happening, but there was ways that the idea of computers were starting to kick in.